Hello and welcome to East Castle Place's weekly Bible study. I'm Chaplain Harold Epley and glad you can join us today. We're going to continue with our Bible study using the book Dancing in the Aisle, Spiritual Lessons We Have Learned from Children, a book that was written by my wife Rochelle Melander and myself a number of years ago. And we've been using it for our Bible study. Each chapter in this book takes a story about a child or something that children tend to do, and then reflects on the spiritual lesson that we as adults can learn from their experiences. We always tie it in with a Bible passage, which I read, and then we conclude with some discussion questions for you to think about. Today's topic is entitled, It's Not Fair. It's not fair. Something that you hear children say from time to time, perhaps with their siblings. I know when I was growing up, I used to say that a lot about my sister, that she got to do something and I didn't, and I'd say, it's not fair. But you know, we do that as adults too, don't we? Because the world is not fair, and there are many injustices that haunt us all in different ways. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And as a scripture, we have a rather long passage today. It's a parable, and it's one you just might know. It's often called the parable of the prodigal son, a story that Jesus told, and it's recorded in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. So I'm going to read the whole story to you, and then we'll reflect on that, and then the lesson, It's Not Fair. Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father, but while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back, safe and sound.' Then the older brother became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" Wonderful story. and I know that many sermons have been preached on that parable. We're going to be looking at it more from the perspective of the older son, because he is the one who ends up saying, "It's not fair." It's a beautiful story of reconciliation and how God loves us and always welcomes us back. But we're going to focus on that other part of the story, the older son not being so happy that the younger son is welcomed back by his father. And that'll lead into our devotion now, entitled, "It's Not Fair." Our friend's two sons, David and Joey, had just returned from a night of neighborhood trick-or-treating. They sat sprawled on the living room floor, candy spread out in front of them, counting and comparing their riches. "I got 6 chocolate bars," boasted David. "Well, I got 7 packs of gum," replied Joey. "Hey, look," shouted David, "I got a squirt gun with 5 cylinders for water." "Where's mine?" squealed Joey, searching through the remains in his bag. "Ha! You didn't get one," taunted David. "It's not fair. I just got this stupid plastic car. Can I have your water gun?" "No way. You've got plenty of candy in that car. I call no trading." David and Joey exchanged more words. As we watched the ensuing argument, we couldn't help observing that Joey had been content with all his Halloween loot until he started comparing what he had with his brother. Comparisons often result in discontentment. Early in life, most children discover that much in this world is not fair. Beauty, health, and wealth are not doled out in equal measure to all. Teachers, coaches, and even parents play favorites. Studies reveal that in the classroom and on sports teams, certain children are treated more favorably than others on the basis of their gender, race, socioeconomic class, or physical appearance. In addition, many children learn to compare themselves to others when parents or teachers make comments such as, "Why can't you be more like Johnny or Susie?" As we grow into adulthood, we do not cease this comparing. We check to see how our friends are doing in their careers. We look out the windows to see which new grown-up toys the neighbors have recently purchased. Life seems most unfair when we compare ourselves to others. It always will. At every age, we will find colleagues and friends who have accomplished more and earned more than we have, and we will uncover the discrepancies. Some of our colleagues have been given better opportunities and more valuable advice. They have benefited from advantages that we have not received. Certainly these injustices ought not be overlooked. And yet even the most vocal civil rights leaders recognize that before one can strive for a more just society, one must first acknowledge and celebrate one's own gifts. Sometimes we spend so much time envying the good fortune of our friends and neighbors that we fully miss the fact that our own Halloween bag is overflowing with treats. Jesus told a story that speaks to this in the parable of the prodigal son. The younger of 2 brothers asks for and receives his half of his father's estate. In short order, this son squanders all that his father gave to him. After wandering hungry and working as a hired man, he returns to his father. The father, filled with joy over his son's return, throws a huge welcoming party. The older son, who had faithfully remained by his father's side all the while, sees his father doting on his brother, and he cries, "Unfair!" The father responds, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." It's as if the father is saying, "Open your eyes, kid. Look around at your blessings. I give you each day." Like Joey and the prodigal son's brother, We often become most dissatisfied with our lives when we compare ourselves to others. At a Bible study on the topic of gratitude, one of our parishioners shared a story that reminded us of this point. He had recently been turned down for a promotion at work, while one of his colleagues with less experience had received a raise. As he sat down at the supper table, he complained in a loud voice about the unfairness of his work situation. Then, without thinking, he reached across the table, grabbed a piece of bread, and stuffed it in his mouth. His 3-year-old daughter stared at him with a bewildered frown. "Daddy," she said, "you forgot. First we bow our heads." Embarrassed by his daughter's comment, the man realized that he had become so obsessed with his unfair treatment at work that he had neglected to observe his family's nightly ritual of thanking God for all their blessings before eating supper. "Now, whenever I feel like complaining because this world is so unfair, I remember my daughter's comment," he told us. "Before I complain, I bow my head. It makes a difference, you know." Yes, life is unfair, and sometimes there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But as this devotion says, we become most aware of the unfairness of things when we start comparing ourselves to other people. It might be people around us or people that we see in passing. But when we do that, we start to lose sight of our own gifts and our own blessings. And really the antidote to feeling that life is unfair is to take a moment and look at all the wonderful things that we have in our life. And, you know, in the story here of the prodigal son, the older son was content until he saw his younger brother getting all the attention. So it was once he started making a comparison to his brother that he felt unhappy. And of course, when we dwell on the fact that life is unfair, we quickly become quite miserable. And without gratitude in our lives, we can become bitter kind of people. So a lot to think about there. There's some questions here for you to reflect on. First one is, who are some of the people you competed with or compared yourself to as a child? In what ways did that affect your self-image? May have been siblings, may have been friends, may have been other people you heard about, but most of us as children do a little bit of comparing and competing. So think about that and how that affected you. Second question, what are some ways that people typically respond when their experiences are unfair? Well, we know they complain, but what are some other things that people might do? Third question, what are some of the blessings that you have overlooked in the last week? So this question is to get you to be a little bit introspective and just stop and look around at your life and realize that even if it's not quite the way you want it to be, you are continuing to be blessed by God in many ways. And once you do that, it definitely changes your attitude about life. And there's a fourth question, what do you need to do to become more aware of the blessings that surround you? Well, as I said, taking a moment, prayer can help with that, but think about ways that you can make that a daily practice of being grateful for all the things that are in your life instead of dwelling on the things that you don't have. So that's our message for this week for you to reflect on. And I'll be back next week. I've got a few more chapters in this book that I will share with you, and hope they are being meaningful for you and helping you to reflect on Bible lessons as well as your own personal life. See you next week.